Welcome back to Weekend Walkabout in our gardens and years virtually. We're in New Zealand and talking about New Zealand's South Island, Alps and shores, moving into part 3, the Queenstown Botanical Garden. We're coming to you from gardenaz.org. I'm Janet McConovich. Stephen Nicola is with me too.
Very cool.
Queenstown, the Botanical Garden, the information that we read about it said that it started out with random planting. It was just a place that was selected by the townspeople to say, let's have a garden here. And so people just planted stuff. And it kind of worked out because now there are a whole bunch of 100-plus-year-old big trees, big trees. It's a beautiful garden and very obviously very well loved by the community. Lots of flowering trees of all kinds, crab apples,
magnolias, crab apples, cherries,
dogwoods,
lilacs, and rhododendrons,
and whereas in Auckland, in zone 8-9, you can't really grow daffodils and tulips well. We're now in a colder zone. We're in 6-7, and they're able to grow daffodils and tulips, and they have great displays of them. There's no deer to eat them, so don't ask us about how to keep the deer out of them.
No, there's no deer.
There are rabbits. The rabbits got introduced, and they're working on it. There are deer someplace here. They haven't gotten rid of all of them because
and there are deer farms.
Yeah. But very much the bedding scheme arrangement where there'll be bulbs there, and then the bulbs will be taken out and put a different plant in its place.
Again, a very English look at times.
Yeah, it is.
There.
A rose garden around the Camperdown Elm, with around the rose garden, rhododendrons, big rhododendrons. Please look at me next to those rhododendrons.
Janet, these are the rhodies.
And that's what rhododendrons should look like. It's why I don't like to grow rhododendrons in Michigan. They never.
Why bother?
They can look like that in some places on the East Coast as you get closer to the water and there's more moisture in the air. They just don't do well in the middle of the continent. In fact, other things do well too. This is a false cypress. And, I'm glad I got that bright blue cloak because I stand out in the pictures. And which false cypress? I think it's a Lawson false cypress, but I've collected pieces and pictures, and I'll make sure I know later. A California redwood.
Just look at that.
Sit under.
I mean,
so if you want to go native, and they're beginning to go native in many areas here, they're not going to give up these trees. That's not a native tree, but how could you possibly give up a tree that was planted in 1867?
It's one thing when it's a lumber field that eventually they'll take out, then you can go, but you might have to keep planting some lumber things. We're not sure what they use here.
Well, this is an island country. They need to produce their own
and
wood.
We saw some wood that was cut and it was that big around, and it was 8 years old.
Yeah, the rings are much bigger.
They have something.
There are some things that I wish they wouldn't let grow big. This is a monkey puzzle tree. We had a monkey puzzle tree as a house plant. And whenever we had people over to visit, we had to take the monkey puzzle tree and block it in the bathroom because they are the leaves, the spines are quite sharp. It is a puzzle how to climb something. Nice horizontal branches, but so many sharp leaves on it. And a very wonderful sculpture.
This to me was the best single sculpture I've ever seen of the dog. That dog was so happy
jumping into the water.
Maybe it's because I was missing our dogs, and I'm
very well
imagining, but it was well done.
We couldn't find any gardeners, and we've got some calls into the Queenstown Botanical Garden because we had some questions, and we'll probably come back to those later. But they had a great setup there. And what I wanted to ask was, with all the hedging that you have to do already, even trying to step into that hedge to cut in all the parts on the inside, do you want more natives like the cabbage trees that you don't have to prune? And when somebody said, let's put a new hedge in of our native plants, did you say, oh my gosh, I don't want any more hedging to do because this is the new hedge got up by the entranceway. They just topped it. It just got to the height that they want to keep it.
It wasn't a U. The foliage looks like a U. It was not a U.
It's a podocarpus. It's one of the native plants. And let me see, what's this one called? I'm sorry.
We can't.
I'm going to draw a blank. I've got too many new names.
We just know it's not a U.
But it is in the podocarpus family. It's not in the same family with the U. We did notice things like trees that had dark bark
real dark bark.
And
This
we
magnolia.
talked about sooty mold, and we said, well, here's a good example. These are trees that are not native there and probably brought with them some aphids. The gardeners in another garden told us that's probably it. But here, I think here you can see how dark the bark is on the magnolia on the top left, and how it should be gray brown, as you see in the right. So when people say, how do you know that something's got an insect problem? Because Steve and I will tell them that you're looking at. That's what you're looking at, is the sooty mold that grows on insect excrement, changes the color of the bark, and will tell you that maybe this year you ought to be washing things off with a hard spray of water, or giving the plant extra water to make up for what the aphids have taken out of it. But we felt at home in Queenstown because they're using our plants,
a lot of the
hellebores,
plants that we're used to
dicentras,
seeing.
primulas, pulsatillas, some cool primulas.
Very cool primulas.
Yeah. Monkshood, where it really should grow, where it's cool, moist.
No brown leaves,
Yeah,
no
no
spots.
dead leaves. And doing nifty things like supporting the branch of the pin oak that's near the ground with art.
That's a northern pin oak.
A huge tree.
Massive.
And doing very English things. This is a memorial to the Scott expedition to the South Pole, which failed. And those Brits, they celebrate the failure as much as they do
the Russians were, oh well.
The Russians would have said, well, it was fine, it was going to fail anyway. They actually, on the plaque on the big boulder, reproduced the entire last letter of Scott about how, well, we proved that we can handle hardship. And anyway, and I like the line here. They rest in the great white silence of Antarctica amid the scenes of their triumphs. They didn't make it to the pole. The garden is not just the garden. Whoops, sorry, Steve. The garden is not just a garden. It's there throughout the gardens. There's what do they call it?
A frisbee golf. They call it disc golf.
So here's the tee for a frisbee golf, where you stand to throw toward the target. And here, where this magnolia is blooming, they love their magnolias. Lots of different kinds of magnolias. Behind the magnolia is a bowling green. That is bowling, it's in lawn bowling. And they're serious about this lawn bowling, but they're also serious about the gardening all around the bowling green, which is in the middle of the botanical garden. There's roses espaliered on the fences. That one's a Lady Banks rose. There's a perennial garden and bulbs at the feet all the way through. It's a beautiful garden. And if you follow outside of the garden, if you walk out of the garden, you end up at the edge of the garden where a skate park. I don't know if you've ever seen a skate park. This looks like an empty swimming pool, and it's not. It's called a bowl for them to skate on a skateboard. We're kind of glad that nobody was there when we were there skating, because I can imagine that a lot of people get a lot of injuries in here. In fact, they tell you, caution, please supervise your children
at all times.
So there's a skate park. There's also a much tamer, a skate park and an ice arena.
I don't think,
And it's signs in the background there. And then a very nice kids playground where
that's
great
a cool
slide
slide
almost down into the river. And we'll leave it at that. That's it for part 3 of New Zealand South Island. Stay tuned now for part 4.